We're joined here by Dennis Glackin. He is one of 8 candidates for 4 seats on the St. Michael's Town Commission. Good afternoon, Mr. Glackin.
Good afternoon.
So we have several questions for the candidates. The first is, why are you seeking election to a full term on the Town Commission?
Well, as you may know, I've been a commissioner for approximately a year. I was appointed last May when Mike Gorman resigned and took a job in California. So I've been serving for about a year and have felt my way along for a couple of those months, and I've started to understand better the town's operations and how things run in town. So I've learned a lot about their operations, and I think it would be a good thing to continue in that role. The town is obviously going through challenging times with the COVID-19 crisis. We've been in this since approximately March, and things are okay, but it seems like the whole country is always on the edge of it getting out of control. But I'd like to kind of stick with it and continue with that and help guide the town through this. I was very instrumental in developing the new zoning ordinance for the town. It started when I was on the Planning Commission and then chairman of the Planning Commission, and I continued playing a role in that process when I became a commissioner. And I'd like to see that ordinance adopted, which is scheduled for a vote in August. And I'd like to monitor some of the changes we made in that ordinance and see how they work, with the idea that perhaps some fixes are needed down the line. But I just would like to see that the product of our work in action. And I think being a commissioner, I'm in a better position to do that. We made changes in the short-term rental section of the ordinance. We changed the height limit in the floodplain to 38 feet so that people could raise their houses if they needed to, because of the potential for sea level rise. And we also tried to streamline the approval process to help people move through the process a little faster, whether they needed just a site plan approval or special exception or variance or whatnot. So that's been kind of my pet project, and I'd like to, again, like I said, see it enacted and see what the results are.
Sure. What makes you feel like you are one of the best candidates for the position? Or another way of asking that is, why should the voters vote for you?
My educational background is as a city planner. I have a bachelor's degree from Villanova in political science, and I have a master's degree from Syracuse University in regional planning. So I've spent my entire career in the planning field, both as the planning director for a large municipality in Pennsylvania, where I was involved with capital improvement programming, land use matters, staffing, managing a municipal department, all of which I think are relevant to serving as a commissioner. Then in 1991, I started a successful land planning and landscape architecture business that I ran for 25 years. And again, dealt with budgets, hiring people, working with multiple municipalities on everything from developing comprehensive plans to development proposals. And I steered our firm through the 2008 financial crisis. So I know what it's like to deal with a crisis, and we came through that successfully. And I think that I would be helpful in helping the town get through this. In that work as a land planner, I appeared before many boards and commissions in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland area. These are small towns and large towns. And in those cases, I had to deal with things like the fiscal impacts of development on a town, transportation and traffic issues associated with a particular development, historic preservation, redevelopment, environmental concerns. So I think all of those things come into play in a town like St. Michael's at one time or another. And I just feel that I have the expertise to, again, contribute something to the town that perhaps some of the other candidates may not. And finally, I guess as a planner, my tendency is to look forward. Look what's down the road, how do we deal with things that are likely to happen, and come up with solutions, hopefully before they become a problem. And I think that's, again, a characteristic of an elected official that's very important.
Okay, thank you. The last question is, in your opinion, what are the major issues facing St. Michael's, and how would you address those issues?
Well, I think the most obvious one is the COVID crisis. We've been trying to work with businesses to help them reopen where possible. Obviously, we've been following the governor's guidelines and the guidelines of Talbot County, but we also need to protect the residents. As a tourist town, we have people coming in from all over the tri-state area, and I think it's important to try and protect the town and kind of steer us through that process. The COVID issue will have impacts on the town's budget for sure, and we need to stay on top of that. We've just passed a new budget that actually starts today, and I think that quarterly reviews to see where the revenues are and see where the expenditures are, and should we cut, do we need to cut, I think are important decisions coming down the road. I feel very strongly about supporting our police department. I think we have a super chief and Chief Smith, and his community policing approach is the right approach in towns these days. And I like to see that continue and be supportive of him as much as I can. One of the main issues I see is, and this is certainly a long-term planning issue, is sea level rise. As you may or may not know, well, I'm sure you know, the entire Chesapeake Bay area is susceptible to sea level rise. Our town sees increasing nuisance flooding with high tides, not even hurricanes or nor'easters, but just high tides. And so you see continual flooding along the harbor area. All the experts that I can see through their writings show a sea level rise of like 1.2 to 2.1 feet by 2050. And then you have storm surges on top of that. So I think that's a major issue. And we're starting to address that by the Waterways Management Advisory Board. They've just hired a consultant to help them collect data around the harbor in terms of the elevations and the levels of water and so forth. And the next thing they would then do would be to prepare a plan. And then the hard part would then be to fund it and implement the plan. I think there will be some federal and state money available for that. But at the end of the day, that could be a very expensive to-do list. And again, I think that's important to kind of carry on with. Housing's an issue with me. The town has developed over the years over 170 housing units for lower and moderate income families, and I think that's great. But there are houses in the town that are not in very good condition, and I'd love to figure out a way to provide assistance to those homeowners, either through a loan program for rehabilitation or a grant program to get them up to some basic level of just a basic level for good living. I think the budget, as I said earlier, needs continual attention, and we need to watch that and make sure our taxes equal the services that the town's residents want and the town businesses want, no more and no less. And of course, the town building has been an ongoing issue in town. I think that's been studied quite extensively from 2016 to going back to 2007, this whole process started. There's been various studies done by the ad hoc committee, which was made up of some citizens and members of the board. And it's had its approval by the Historic Review Board and the Planning Commission. The CDs are ready for bid, and of course that won't happen until after the election, but I think it's important to continue that process and to decide this once and for all. It's like I said, it's been kicking around for many, many years, and it's gotten various approvals from the town, and the architecture is complete, and I just think it's time to move on with that. So they're the issues and kind of my thoughts on how I see the town moving forward in the next 4 years anyway.